Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from Al-Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. Life after Assad, thousands of prisoners are freed from Syrian jails as the Military Operations Administration forces overthrow the government who've held power for 54 years. Meanwhile, Russia gives political asylum to Assad as the HTS flag flies high above the Syrian embassy in Moscow. And American music mogul Jay-Z denies accusations he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl as he's named alongside Sean Diddy Combs in a US lawsuit. To our top story, and thousands of prisoners, including women and children, have been freed from Syrian jails after the downfall of President Assad's government. Prisons like Syria in Damascus are thought to contain hidden underground cells. Meanwhile, many Syrians have celebrated the change in power, but wait to discover how a change of leadership will affect their lives. Our correspondent, Trent, has travelled to the Syrian border and he sent us this report.
Well, millions across Syria are still coming to terms with their new reality, that the Assad family regime, which has ruled Syria with an iron fist for the best part of 50 years, has now fallen. Historical scenes in the Middle East, some analysts describing it as almost a Berlin Wall type moment for this region as people came out onto the streets and continue to celebrate the fall of Assad. But of course, there is now still uncertainty and questions around what these new HTS rebels will look to do as they seize the levers of power in Damascus. Until now, they are publicly showing that they are reaching out their hands to other minority groups and want to build an inclusive government. But time really will tell. Of course, for Syria's neighbours, they are watching this very, very closely, including Israel. We have seen Israeli tanks and troops moving in to that demilitarised zone behind me here. They have seized that DMZ, the first time they've had a permanent presence there since 1974, when it was created following the Yom Kippur War. Until now, they are saying that it is a temporary measure, but some other countries in this region, including Egypt, have expressed concern that it could be a permanent positioning of Israeli forces to try and seize yet more control of the Golan Heights. We also know the IDF making a number of airstrikes inside of Syria, targeting weapons depots and chemical weapon storage areas that have been abandoned by Assad's troops. The Israelis are saying they are doing that because they want to make sure that those weapons don't fall into the hands of extremists.
Trent on the Syrian border, thank you. Let's get more on those Syrian prisoners now with a volunteer for the humanitarian group, the White Helmets, Ismail Alabdullah. Ismail, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Your teams have been dispatched to help locate cells and prisoners. Why has it actually been so difficult to find them?
First of all, Yesterday we received calls about prisoners are now under the ground because many floors under the ground. This is all the prisons Syria, as now after freeing Syria, now we have reports from everyone that there is a secret prison there and there and there. Why are you focusing on Sadnaya? We focus on Sadnaya because of its bad reputation and the horrific and horrible stories and horrible narratives we heard over the past years. On the other side, as White Helmet, we offered a reward for anyone who can guide us to those secret prisons in all Syria. In Sadnaya, yesterday we received the call and responded to the calls of that they are prisoners under the ground. 5 teams, we dispatched 5 teams with its equipment to there. Until now, after digging and cracking the walls and listening to the sound, we still didn't have any proof. We don't have any proof of any prisoners is now under the floors, under the ground in the down floors.
So it's really a race against time at the moment to free these prisoners. Can you just give us the scale of the operation that's unfolding for you and what lies ahead?
It's very challenging because the building is very big. Many, as you know, and as the world see how the Sudan is big, and if there are hidden cells, it's difficult to find. And what will is waiting for us now, just we'll keep searching, we'll keep digging, we'll keep cracking the walls until reach the final point, and we will report that to all the world what is reality about the Sadnaya prison.
So we're seeing footage now of women and children being released across social media platforms. Why were these people in Sadnaya prison, and what sort of conditions were they living under?
Most all the families of Syria, they have relative or a friend or son or daughter who were kept for years and years and years in Sadnaya. Sadnaya, which is the horrible prison. We have heard and listened to the stories and narrative from those who were kept there. No one can imagine the pain. No one can imagine how they were treated. No food, no bathrooms, nothing. Most of the time naked. They cannot raise their head. They just need to keep down, to keep their heads down. And more than 20 people in one cell, 1 meter or 2 meters square. So difficult, and this is the end of this story of Sadnaya prison. And as White Helmets, we hope that this is the end of all prisons in Syria, and we're working on this. We'll respond to any call that we receive about any secret prison in Syria.
Ismail, just one question, our final question. Is there any indication that there will be any repercussions for the Assad government for the treatment of what you've just been explaining to us of these people in these prisons?
As we worked before over the past decade, we gathered evidences that Assad's regime killed Syrian people by barrel bombs and chemical weapons and all the violations that were committed in Syria. The same thing will keep pursuing the justice for the victims. We will provide with evidence that enable us to hold all the perpetrators and Assad himself accountable for his crimes, how the atrocities and massacres and using the prohibited weapons on civilians over the past years.
Ismail Alabdullah for the White Helmets, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. Now, sticking with that story, and the Kremlin has officially granted political asylum to the former Syrian president after he fled Damascus from the Military Operations Administration forces at the weekend. A Kremlin spokesperson told reporters there was no plan for Putin to meet with Assad, but an HTS flag is now flying at the country's embassy in Moscow. Let's get the latest from Moscow with our correspondent, Dasha Chernyshova. Dasha, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, this is a huge blow to Russia. They have been allies for decades. Was Moscow really surprised by this rapid fall of the Assad government?
Well, indeed, according to the statements released by the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, the whole world was surprised by how rapidly the militant opposition have managed to take control over Damascus, and Moscow is no exception. This has been surprised. Moscow has been surprised, and Moscow is also saying that it is going to carefully analyze the situation as things stand now. But as you have rightly pointed out, the new flag has been installed on the Syrian embassy in the Russian capital. So that is a sign that Moscow is actually willing to cooperate with all the authorities in Syria. Even though Moscow used to support the government of Bashar al-Assad, we understand Moscow wants to make sure that it has the communication channels open when it comes to the cooperation with the opposition in Syria. Also, an interesting observation here that has been made by many of those who have been following the developments. Russia has been calling the HTS as terrorists, saying they are listed as such by the United Nations, by the United States. Now, in all the state media, you can certainly see that what has been happening in Syria is that the military opposition have taken control of the country. So it does appear that Moscow is willing to make sure they maintain the communication channels. At the same time, Moscow is calling for the political process to start under the auspices of the United Nations, for the interstate dialogue as well as the dialogue inside Syria among the different opposition groups.
Russia has 2 strategic military bases in Syria, giving access to the region. I was just wondering, where does this leave President Putin's presence in the Middle East? And could this be a reason why he's keeping those lines of communication open?
Absolutely, it is seen as being the key actually reason for that. We understand that to this moment the situation is very volatile, and Kremlin understands that very clearly. Therefore, Peskov has said on Monday that it is premature to talk about the maintaining of Russia's military presence in this country, but certainly it's going to be the subject of communication and discussions with the new authorities. To remind you, Russia has the airfield in Khmeimim as well as the naval base in Tartus on the Mediterranean. And certainly these are the facilities that Moscow would like to maintain in this region. But we have been hearing different opinions from different layers of the Russian establishment, some saying that actually there has been security guarantees promised to the Russian side from the military opposition with regards to the security of those facilities, as well as the Russian diplomatic mission in Syria. But also others saying that it is the very fact that there are bases and there are the Russian military that is providing for the security of those facilities. But it is one way or another a very important question for Russia that is yet to be precise, especially given the volatility of the situation in Syria at this stage.
Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, thank you very much for bringing us the latest on that story. To the US now, and President-elect Donald Trump has blamed the ousting of Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad on Russia's abandonment of its ally in favour for pursuing its invasion of Ukraine. He has also said he would be happy to keep the US in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but only if other members of the military alliance are paying their way. Kate Fisher has this report from Washington.
Syrians are living their first full day free of the brutal Assad regime in more than 50 years.
Today, we don't give our joy to anyone. We've been waiting for this day for 50 years.
The family of Austin Tice has been waiting for more than 12 years. That's when the American journalist was captured in Syria. The White House says that getting him home is a top priority.
We believe he's alive. We think we can get him back, but we have no direct evidence of that yet. And Assad should be held accountable.
Biden hailed the fall of Assad as historic. The speed of events in Syria leaving even the usually brash US President-elect Donald Trump seemingly a little disconcerted as he met French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris.
It certainly seems like the world is going a little crazy right now. Yeah. And we'll be talking about that.
On social media, Trump said that Russia's abandonment of Assad led to his downfall and that the Kremlin lost interest in Syria because of its war in Ukraine, pushing Russian President Vladimir Putin to cut his losses and end the conflict. Trump also gave his first US network news interview since being re-elected. Speaking on NBC News' Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, he wouldn't commit to keeping the US in NATO unless other member countries of the Western military alliance spend more on defence.
Again, they have to pay their bills. If they pay their bills, absolutely.
But not if they don't pay their bills.
But NATO's taken advantage of us.
Trump has long vowed to disengage the US from global conflicts, but events in Syria mean that promise will be immediately tested. He'll have to consider whether to withdraw US troops from the country and, if he doesn't, whether he's happy to let US adversaries fill the vacuum. Kate Fisher, Al-Arabiya News, Washington.
Let's have a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Donald Trump has told reporters he will look at pardoning those involved in the 2021 US Capitol riots on his first day back in the Oval Office next month. The president-elect also promised the end of automatic citizenship for anyone who was born in the country. Now, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman welcomed UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Riyadh, where both leaders pledged to strengthen bilateral ties. High on the agenda were enhancing defence and economic cooperation and exploring opportunities for increased industrial collaboration. This visit marks a key stop in Starmer's first official tour of the Gulf since becoming UK Prime Minister. During his trip, he emphasised that the stability of the Middle East is crucial for establishing a secure foundation at home. 2 people are dead and 3 are still missing after an explosion at a fuel depot near Florence in Italy. 9 people were also injured in the blast, with an emergency alert sent to everyone living within 5 kilometres of the site. South Korean leader Yoon Suk-yeol has been banned from leaving the country after declaring martial law last week. Yoon has apologized for his decision and could still face a criminal investigation. According to the country's defense ministry, the president is still legally commander-in-chief, despite calls for him to stand down. Police in New York are questioning a person of interest in the hunt for the gunman responsible for the killing of top health insurance executive Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel 5 days ago. Divers have been searching Central Park's underwater areas for any evidence, and forces have also been on a manhunt in Georgia. So far, neither the suspect nor the weapon have been found. The American music mogul Jay-Z has been named in a US lawsuit that alleges he, alongside Sean Diddy Combs, drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl in New York in 2000. Jay-Z, real name Sean Carter, has denied the allegation and dismissed the legal action from the anonymous accuser as a blackmail attempt. Sean Combs, who also denies the claims against him, currently awaits trial after being charged with sex trafficking and racketeering. Let's get more on those details of this case with our correspondent Sally Patterson, who joins us now from New York. Sally, thank you so much for joining us. Jay-Z vehemently denies these allegations, but can you give us some detail about what they do entail?
Very serious allegations indeed coming out. This is the first high-profile defendant to be named alongside Sean Diddy Combs, who has been in the spotlight several times in recent months with several allegations of his own. But this, for the first time, is also bringing another A-list celebrity with him, and that is Jay-Z. Now, the rapper is accused of being involved in these allegations way back in 2000. The alleger in this case, the accuser, is not named in the documents filed on Sunday, but they are referred to as Jane Doe. She claims to have been 13 at the time, and she says she tried to go to some music video awards, and she says that when she couldn't get in because she was only 13 and not on the list and didn't have a ticket, she started speaking to a limousine driver who says that he could take her to an after party. She says she went along to that party and was given a drink, after which she says she felt woozy and needed to rest. She claims she went into a bedroom inside this party, and it was there that she says that Combs and Carter came in and raped her one after another. They said she claims that another celebrity, a female celebrity, was also in the room and stood by and watched. Now, of course, both of these men, as we've said, strongly deny the allegations. They say that this is really a pursuit of money from celebrities and claim that they had nothing to do with this.
Just tell us a little bit about Jay-Z and Sean Combs' relationship. How do they know one another? What's the connection there?
Well, these men were really coming into the same circles at the same time back in the 90s. They had a friendly rivalry at the beginning of their music careers and have actually collaborated several times since then on various projects. Those include both musically, but also they made a joint donation, for example, in the wake of Hurricane Katrina here in the US, both handing over a giant check together. They were also seen out in public several times over the years, especially after the relationship began with Beyonce as well. The three of them would often find themselves out at parties and in similar circles as well. And so they've been in the spotlight several times in recent years. And we also heard from Diddy himself years ago saying how much he appreciates that relationship that he has with Jay-Z.
So you mentioned Beyonce there. Jay-Z is, of course, famously married to her. Have we heard anything from her so far on this matter at all?
Well, she is indirectly linked to this, of course, being married to Jay-Z and having collaborated herself with Sean Combs musically as well. Now, we haven't heard anything from her specifically, but in a statement put out by Jay-Z, he talks about the impact that these allegations will have on his family. Just to read you a short amount of that, he says, "My only heartbreak is for my family. My wife and I will have to sit our children down, one of whom is at the age where her friends will surely see the press and ask questions about the nature of these claims and explain the cruelty and greed," he says, of people. He says, "I mourn yet another loss of innocence." They, of course, have 3 children together who will indirectly be affected by these very serious allegations as well.
Thank you so much for that, Sally Patterson in New York. We appreciate that. Let's have a look at the top business news. Volkswagen workers across Germany are back on strike today as a 4th round of negotiations between unions and managers takes place. The car maker's decision to cut wages and close factories in order to slash costs and keep up with Asian competitors has resulted in a bitter standoff with workers. Britain's Chancellor has told finance leaders in Brussels that having a reset in relations will boost economic growth between the UK and Europe. Rachel Reeves said the UK government wanted to break down barriers to trade and help businesses sell in each other's markets. It's the first time a British Chancellor has given an address of this kind since the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. To sport now, and British race driver Lando Norris secured McLaren's first Formula One championship for 26 years at the weekend, winning the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. It was his 4th win of the season, giving him enough points to take the trophy. To cricket now, and South Africa are one step closer to the World Test Championship final after a 109-run win over Sri Lanka in Khabera. The squad could compete at Lord's in June if they win both tests against Pakistan on the 26th of December. And football stadiums all over Saudi Arabia are upping their chances to host the FIFA World Cup in 2034 with several new sites. The Saudi bid to host the tournament received the highest technical score according to FIFA with 419.8 out of 500. FIFA will make an official announcement later this week. And finally, Hong Kong has long been a must-see spot for food lovers. But for Muslim travellers and residents, finding a restaurant to eat can be a challenge. Now the city is trying to change that, with its leader announcing measures to increase the number of Halal certified restaurants to draw travellers from the Middle East and Southeast Asia as the city looks to diversify and revive its stagnant economy. Laura Westbrook has this report.
This is one of the few Chinese restaurants in Hong Kong that Anwar Rashid and his family can eat at. The visitors from Singapore travelled 30 minutes by bus to get to this halal certified eatery, which means food must be prepared separately from forbidden items such as pork under Islamic rules.
Of course, a lot of more of halal food will be nicer, and of course, like a variety of it. Like you do have kebab joints, which is halal here over here. But that's why we travel, right? You want to eat that country's food.
Islam food was started by Ma Tong Waiman's father-in-law, who fled mainland China during the Second World War.
So we got Sichuan, Shanghai, Peking, and Guangdong style, cooking style.
Hong Kong is home to 300,000 Muslims, but only around 106 out of some 13,000 licensed dining spots in Hong Kong are halal certified.
The government is on a big push to get this number up as Hong Kong looks to tap into the potential of Muslim travelers and investors from Southeast Asia and the Middle East amid geopolitical tensions with Europe and the United States.
The restaurant orders its meat from Australia and New Zealand, which can be more pricey, while sourcing suppliers can also be a challenge. Mrs. Ma says education will also go a long way in making the city more Muslim-friendly.
Hong Kong people you have to get used to it first, right? Because many Hong Kong people will eat pork or they don't know anything about Muslim. They just don't know that they won't eat pork. That's it. Or they will have hijab like this.
The city's chief imam, Mufti Muhammad Arshad, says making Hong Kong more attractive to Muslims goes beyond food.
For the last few months, I have seen the changes at airport. They have provided the prayer space to different parts of airport, as well as the halal restaurant and many five-star hotels. They are also converting their hotel to halal-friendly environment, like providing the copies of the Holy Book Quran.
With the city facing tough economic challenges, he says getting more restaurants halal certified will bring in more customers. But with just over 1% of Muslim visitors arriving from Southeast Asian countries and the Middle East last year, there is still a way to go. Laura Westbrook for Arabiya News, Hong Kong.
A reminder of our top stories. Life after Assad. Thousands of prisoners are freed from Syrian jails as the Military Operations Administration forces overthrow the government who've held power for 54 years. Syria's Prime Minister has told Al-Arabiya he has now agreed to hand over power. Meanwhile, Russia gives political asylum to Assad as the new Syrian flag flies high above the Syrian embassy in Moscow. An American music mogul, Jay-Z, denies accusations he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl as he's named alongside Sean Diddy Combs in a US lawsuit. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you for joining us. Riz Khan is coming up next. And don't miss Tom Burgess-Watson with GNT. Good night.